Well, good morning and welcome to another edition of Expert Alert. I'm your host, Jim Tabor. This is where we bring in experts from different fields of businesses around the Gulf Coast to give you tips on some of the different things and talk about different products or features that they have with their business. We have had for the past year, coming in once a month, Kerry and Jennifer Milligan from Strojny Financial, talking about your finances, things that you should be concerned with. And one of the things that we did over the last two visits that they had here in August and July was talking about that mid-year financial checkup plan. Mm-hmm. So we're going to kind of cover that again today.
Yeah, well, we got a lot of questions coming in after those segments about, okay, well, when we're talking about comprehensive financial planning, what does that look like? What should I expect if I go to a meeting and ask an advisor, can you help me create my comprehensive plan? So we thought we'd go through some of the elements of those plans today. Mm-hmm. That might help with what that meeting process would look like and what to expect to give you a level of comfort. So that's sort of what we're going to talk about. Okay. So when our firm looks at the comprehensive financial planning process, we look at what we call the 8 wealth management strategies. Okay, so there's 8 areas of finance that people tend to have in their lives. They don't all have, not everybody has all of them, but everybody has some of them.
Right.
So what those are, the first one is cash flow and debt management. And a lot of people, this is like the only one that they ever really look at is, what am I making? What am I spending? How much do I owe? How do I pay it off? And we are in that silo. So everybody has that one, but it is a place where a lot of people do get stuck and never look at any of these other ones. The next one that you could have would be, so there's investment management, business management, what we call risk management, which is basically your insurances, right? Your life insurance, your long-term care. There's educational planning, estate planning. So that's like, okay, I've got far enough along that I've taken care of me. Now what am I going to do for everybody else as my legacy? Which ones did I miss?
Retirement planning.
Like you win the lottery.
Yeah, retirement,
which is the most important to most people.
Yeah.
And then there's another one that's called special situations.
Which could be anything, like maybe you have someone who's disabled or you're planning for a big wedding or something like that.
Something that's a one-off, or something that doesn't fit into that.
Okay.
And so to go back to what Jen was saying, where people get into the cash flow or and debt, that can be good if they start there, because we really have to start, because you have to look at your budget, because a lot of people don't have a budget. So if you don't know what you're spending monthly, how are we even going to start building blocks of how much can we save then?
Right.
And then how much can we invest, right? And where do we save? Do we have emergency fund? And so that's the first part. But all of it's intertwined. One thing, if you didn't hear in there, that's extremely important that we do not have set aside as its own category, because we feel like it encompasses every one of those categories, is tax planning. Okay, because we're always affected by taxes, and so it's you've ever heard the phrase, "It's not how much you make, but how much you keep." Right?
Yeah.
And this is especially important when we go into retirement phase too. Where do I take funds from first? A tax-free, a tax-deferred account that now will be taxable. Where do I go? And it's even more important then in the tax or in the retirement distribution phase. So tax encompasses all, and fortunately for us, that's a bit. We have so much experience with that as financial planners, because we do, as a company, 9,000 tax returns a year.
Wow.
We're able to bring that and make sure that we're tax sensitive, and help the client with that.
Well, and I would say that another thing around that, so we have the taxes in there, but we want to look at each one of these issues and we want to evaluate what's important to the client, because there are some people that are more concerned with educational and estate planning, some people that are more concerned with retirement planning. It just depends on stage of life, priorities and values and that sort of thing. So there's a lot, everybody wants to come in and know, the quantitative stuff. They want to know, okay, how much do I need to retire? What rate of return do I have to get to retire? Where we're actually going to start is with the subjective things. What do you want your life to look like? What are those goals?
What kind of lifestyle are you wanting?
Paint me a picture.
Yeah.
Correct.
And then we can back into, okay, what do the numbers kind of need to look like to get there? And it's not a number. It's a huge range of numbers that can satisfy the big picture. And then from there, we can look at, okay, now we drill down into what's called a risk profile questionnaire. I mean, we need to know, are you someone that doesn't mind, that is a little bit more of an aggressive investor. You know, you like to go see those numbers growing and you're not going to panic when we have a downturn? Or are you someone that you would rather have 4 or 5% and reduce your risk significantly? We need to know that in building the plan that's right for you. And another point around that is, so we take all of that and we then build into the products and the recommendations. So we can't start there. Like, people come in and they're like, what should I do with this? And we're like, that's not the starting place. And that's disconcerting to people because they're like, oh, wait, now I don't know what to say. Because that was my big question. So we walk you through that conversation.
Right, and that's, we've had conversations where someone comes in, I want to make 7%. And I'm like, why do you want to make 7%? I just think that's a good rate of return. How does that fit in the big picture? Are you going to be able to retire and live the quality of life you want at 7%? So again, it starts with the plan, right? And what she's saying, you go to the basics and see what, when do you want to retire? The 4 basic components of that is, when do you want to retire? How much do you want to live on, right? How growth-oriented conservative you want to be on your investments, and how much are you wanting to contribute now in the accumulation phase. Those are the 4 components that you can adjust. When we go in and do planning, those are the 4 basics. There's some other things, but those are the 4 basics that we can adjust. And why it's important to have a plan is, we've had cases where we've looked at it and people end up, they were really concerned after 2008, right? And we've done the plan and we look at it all in big picture in the retirement phase planning. And we say, yeah, you can actually go very conservative on your investments now. And you're on track to have the lifestyle you are. Now, a lot of people can't do that. They have to still have some growth-oriented investments to keep pace with inflation and longevity that we have as we're living in the human race. But you really want to have a plan, because if not, you're just doing things, piecemeal. You don't really have it tied together. And and the good part about our planning, she said, people come in and we want to answer their goals because that's what they're passionate about. What's the thing that's really brought you in here to talk? But we also look for what we call blind spots. What have you not thought of? So we have a very robust, comprehensive financial planning program software that we use that does the quantitative and the qualitative. It runs thousands of scenarios and a lot of what ifs, and we can see that.
I'm sure a lot of people don't realize that there's that many of different options that they can go with to help plan their financial future.
Yeah.
Right. Well, a lot of the calculators and things you see online, they just say, what is your expected rate of return? And it's going to plug in that 6% or 8% for every single year. That's not what actually happens in real life. And if you go into, like, let's say when his parents retired right around that 2008 mark, and you have a big downturn in the early part of your planning, that makes a big difference than if those downturn cycles come later in the season when you've been accumulating longer while you're drawing down. So all those things are in there. But I think the big point is that people think they need to know things about the financial world, and they won't come see a planner. They either don't think they deserve one, or they don't think that they know enough to have the conversation. All you've got to bring is what you want your life to look like, and then we help walk you through it from there.
So you mentioned a long-term care event. If something, how do you protect your so-called nest egg?
Right.
If something like that happens, there's something for your spouse to live off of.
So that's in the risk management department or planning where we're looking at it, and because remember we said we're looking for blind spots, not just long-term care, but what if one spouse dies and they were the main breadwinner? Or do we have enough insurance here? Or is it the right type of insurance?
Right.
For that. Same thing with long-term care. There's long-term care insurance, but sometimes now we use life insurance policies as a strategy where they have riders that give off long-term care benefits. So it's not a cookie-cutter answer, but it does have to be addressed because we're living longer and longer, and we want to protect. Like, one person goes into a nursing home, that could eat up on average $72,000 a year, plus whatever the other spouse has to live on. Right?
Yeah.
So these are very important things. I think the main thing to leave everybody with is this: make your plan, okay? Because Some people get worried in downturns in the markets or certain events happen, but if you're following along with your plan, that can ease your mind and ease your worry and take that away from you.
All right. Kerry, Jennifer, it's been wonderful. Thank you so much. We've learned an awful lot. I have learned an awful lot. Like we were talking before we went on the air, if I win the lottery, I'll be able to be the first person to hear, first people to hear from me. Anyway, if you want some information, trying to make an appointment, you can call Strojny Financial Services. They're located on Pass Road in Biloxi, just on the east side of Keysler Federal Credit Union. Thank you again for being here with us with another edition of Expert Alert.
If you have a question for any of our experts, go to WLOX.com and click on Expert Alert. For a list of any of our upcoming experts, go to WLOX.com and click on Expert Alert.